An old, weathered videotape plays the joyful wedding of Francis and Iris. Everyone is celebrating, except for Francis's brother, Diego, whose expression carries a bitter, uneasy weight. But that world is gone. In the present, a ruthless zombie apocalypse has shattered humanity, forcing Francis to drive his wife and 2 sons toward the isolated countryside home of his parents. Arriving at the desolate estate, Francis steps inside alone to clear the rooms of any hidden horrors. In his parents' bedroom, his heart shatters. He finds his father dead by his own hand, driven to despair after being infected. Taking his father's gun and watch, Francis steps back into the hallway, only to be met by a heartbreaking voice whispering apologies. It's his mother. She has already turned, having bitten her husband before succumbing. She collapses, dragging her rotting body across the floor toward her son, her dead eyes repeating a haunting single word, sorry. With a heavy heart, Francis ends her suffering. After burying both of his parents, the rest of the family is finally allowed inside. While Iris and the boys collapse into sleep, the deep-seated trauma keeps Francis wide awake in the suffocating silence. Desperate for some normalcy, he checks the outdoor water pump and is profoundly relieved to find the water clean and safe, prompting his eager sons to rush out with containers. Back inside, Iris reveals a stash of cigarettes she hid alongside the medical supplies, sparking an immediate disapproval from her strict husband. When young Joshua spots an old barn nearby, Francis agrees to take him along to investigate. Lucas begs them not to go, fearing the unknown, but Francis reassures him, leaving him safe with his mother and his favorite toy soldier. Walking toward the barn, young Joshua notices something peculiar. Francis is now wearing his deceased father's watch. Inside the dim barn, they discover a stash of chickens, and a horrifying sight. One of the estate's servants took his own life after being infected. Coldly unbothered, Francis forces Joshua to pull the keys from the dead man's pocket, causing the corpse to topple directly onto the terrified boy. While Joshua frantically washes himself at the pump, Francis brushes off the terror to Iris and hands Lucas a piece of fresh sugarcane to taste real sweetness for the first time. Exploring the dark basement, the couple uncovers an old generator, a small cot, and disturbing drawings scratched into the walls, dark reminders of Francis's violently abusive childhood. The memories threaten to crush him, forcing Iris to pull him away before he completely breaks down. A chilling wall drawing depicts an adult ruthlessly executing a child. At the dinner table, Francis leads a rigid prayer over humble rations of rice and eggs, quickly shutting down Joshua's attempt to turn on the radio. When Iris questions their long-term survival and insists they join the massive exodus heading north, Francis flatly refuses. He believes staying put is their safest bet. Later that night, Joshua sits outside trying desperately to revive his dead phone with videos of his girlfriend, while Francis watches him like a hawk from the window. Iris seizes the moment to call out Francis's clear favoritism, noting how harshly he treats Joshua compared to the gentle way he handles Lucas. That night, the basement demons bleed into Francis's sleep, trapping him in terrifying nightmares until Iris wakes him and holds him tight. The following morning, Iris confronts him. This house is poisoning his mind. Though Francis admits fault, he fires back with bitter resentment over her hidden past. Reluctantly yielding, the family packs into the car and points north. But tension explodes when Joshua mentions that Uncle Diego went north too, and that Diego had called Iris before they fled the city. Francis seethes, demanding to know why Diego called his wife and not his own brother, suspecting this is the real reason Iris wanted to leave. Their vicious argument is violently cut short as Joshua screams for them to break. Ahead, the road is completely choked by abandoned cars and a heavy military blockade. Convinced they can squeeze through, Iris jumps out to move the barricade, ignoring Francis's warnings that the military didn't seal this road for nothing. Suddenly, a zombified soldier lunges from the shadows. Francis opens rapid fire, saving Iris just as a second creature attacks from behind. Joshua's desperate honking alerts them, but the blaring noise acts as a dinner bell for a massive horde swarming out of the woodwork. Refusing to let his family die, Francis draws the horde away, picking them off one by one while giving Iris and the kids a window to flee. Running out of ammunition, Francis strips a grenade from a fallen soldier, leaps across the tops of abandoned vehicles, and triggers a massive explosion that obliterates the pursuers. Defeated, the family trudges back to the house on foot. Francis declares that since her way nearly got them killed, they are strictly doing things his way from now on. 2 weeks later, Francis visits the bridge, stares at his functioning car, and walks away, returning home on foot with a makeshift supply sled. With fuel secured, he forces himself back into the dreaded basement to fire up the generator, bringing cool air and music back to the home. The kids dance, but Iris watches in stone-cold silence. Finding their old wedding tape, Francis watches it alone before pulling Iris into a passionate embrace in the kitchen. Elsewhere, Joshua manages a brief charge on his phone, only to be interrupted by Lucas, who shares old family albums and makes a striking observation: Joshua is the spitting image of a young Diego. Morning brings a fragile apology from Francis, who believes that with his toxic family gone, they can finally build a fresh start. Iris offers a quiet, hollow agreement. Disaster strikes at the shed when a feral dog attacks Francis, biting his hand before burrowing a deep escape tunnel. Though Iris patches his wound, her medical instincts scream for a rabies shot, which Francis furiously brushes off. Outside, Joshua catches a faint radio broadcast mentioning Delta Camp, but the batteries die instantly, sending him into a rage of frustration. When Iris pushes to investigate the lead, Francis snaps, dragging up traumatic memories of past massacres to keep them anchored in fear. The next day, desperate to toughen Joshua up, Francis drags the boy to an open field, hands him a firearm, and forces him to shoot at a target while hurling psychological abuse. Driven to tears, Joshua finally hits the target, triggering another wave of terrifying flashbacks in Francis's mind. The gunfire, however, wakes the dead. A massive horde surges across the field, forcing a chaotic, terrifying sprint back to the safety of the barricaded house. The next morning reveals total devastation: the shed is smashed, the chickens slaughtered. Tracking the tracks to the river, Francis finds an abandoned car, and his estranged brother, Diego. Diego reveals he lost his own family, breaks the news of their parents' death, and urges Francis to head north before resources run dry. Blinded by rage, Francis pulls a gun on his brother, forcing Diego to drop a map and flee. Finding Diego's left-behind jacket, Francis returns home and delivers a chilling lie: Diego is dead. Plummeting deeper into madness, Francis boards up every window in the house. Desperate to prove the outside world is still crawling with monsters, Francis decapitates a roaming zombie, smears its rancid blood over his clothes, and stages a fake attack. In a twisted attempt at holiday cheer, Francis throws a shabby September Christmas dinner, asking everyone for their ultimate wish. When Iris demands they leave immediately due to dwindling food, Francis retaliates by exposing her pre-outbreak desire to escape her life. Pushed past the breaking point, Francis demands the brutal truth. In front of the horrified children, the ultimate secret drops: Iris and Diego had an affair, and Joshua is Diego's biological son. As Iris begs for the hidden map, Francis pulls it out and burns it to ashes before her eyes, driving Iris to strike him across the face and flee the room. Weeks bleed together. When Joshua finally confronts Francis for holding them hostage with lies, Francis strikes his stepson across the face, staining his father's watch with blood. Suddenly, a desperate knock echoes at the door. A battered soldier named Corcoran collapses inside, claiming he escaped a deadly attack coming from Delta Camp, and revealing that Diego sent him. The web of lies collapses entirely. Furious that his wife and the stranger are allied, Francis locks Corcoran away in the basement. Under the cover of night, Joshua wakes Iris. He can no longer live under Francis's tyranny and resolves to escape north to find Diego. Unable to leave young Lucas behind, Iris stays behind with a broken heart. Morning reveals the open front door. Blind with homicidal rage, Francis marches down to the basement and brutally executes Corcoran with a hammer. Returning upstairs, he knocks a terrified Iris unconscious and drags both her and Lucas down into the very darkness of the basement. Wearing his father's old military uniform, a completely unhinged Francis brings a tray of meat down to his imprisoned family, forcing them to participate in his psychotic delusion. Spotting a dropped knife, Iris hides it under her foot while feeding him sweet, tactical lies to lower his guard. Seizing a moment of panic, Iris smashes the food tray, grabs a metal bar, and violently pries a board off the basement window, only to slip and knock herself cold. In the dead of night, Lucas fakes a medical emergency, screaming at the top of his lungs. As Francis bursts through the door, Iris drives the hidden knife straight into his back. Grabbing the keys, mother and son sprint out of the basement, slamming and locking the heavy door just as gunfire shatters the wood behind them. Bursting outside into a nightmare, they run straight into a zombified Diego, who tears after them and drags Iris to the floor. Young Lucas bravely shatters a flashlight over the monster's head, buying just enough time for Francis, who finally broke out of the basement, to leap onto Diego and smash his skull to pieces. Standing victorious, Francis prepares to turn his wrath on Iris, until Lucas cries out in horror, lifting his sleeve to reveal a catastrophic bite mark. Francis collapses in utter despair. Refusing to let her son die, Iris takes a blade and performs a horrific, desperate amputation of Lucas's arm to halt the infection. Desperate for a blood transfusion and a hospital, Iris begs Francis to run for the car. Francis sprints toward the bridge like a madman. But at the blockade, young Joshua, armed and terrified, panics at the sudden figure rushing toward him and fires his weapon. The bullet strikes true. As life drains from Francis, recognition hits Joshua, who breaks down in agonizing tears. With his final breath, Francis whispers, "My son," before passing away. Sobbing, Joshua slides behind the steering wheel and races back toward the house, unaware that back inside, Iris sits in the dark, apologizing to Lucas as headlights finally pierce through the window. Please make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, like and share this video and drop a comment. Thanks for watching.